Native Americans of Reddit, what are your tribe's ghost stories, legends, or supernatural occurrences? Arctina. It is a legend about a hornet snake in Salagi Cherokee legend. Arctina is said to be very large and round like a tree trunk, with horns on his head. The only way to wound him is to shoot at a singular spot on his forehead that emits bright light. It is similar to a diamond. If you defeat Arctina, you become a miracle worker, a great warrior. Yet, once you see the light of his forehead, you run toward it instead of trying to escape. Even to see Arctina sleeping is death. Not to the hunter, but to his family. My tribe talks about a beast called Rough Translation here, the Flame Walker. Spirits who take the form of a small blue flame that leads people into the swamps and bogs, where they eventually drown or otherwise vanish. Yes, they are basically will-o-wisps. Another of the water-faced hunters, again Rough Translation. And I am not heavily involved with my tribe these days. These creatures have a face that acts like a pool of water, reflecting the face of anyone who looks them in the eyes. They mercilessly hunt down the people who acknowledge them. The only way to avoid them is to not speak to, or others interact with a stranger unless you can see their face from the corner of your eye. We also have the more traditional skinwalker type legends, as well as the Bogman. My tribe is considered part of the Abenaki, but they're actually a smaller sub-tribe. Basically, when it came down to it, there were not enough of the tribe to actually be considered a tribe anymore. Today we number fewer than 200, and only 8 of those are more than half-blooded. My bio father and his brother, as well as my paternal grandparents, are the last 4 full-blooded of my tribe. Damn, I am just a mix. I barely make it to half. Also, it seems the legend you talked about is kinda similar to the SW in terms of not speaking of it. Dean from northern British Columbia here. My mom used to always tell me stories of the Ngani, or Bushmen, wild men, when I was young. They were people who lived in the forest and took away people who wandered too far out, specifically children. I always figured these stories were created by my people to serve 2 purposes. First, to teach young children to not wander far off, and second, to give explanations to kidnappings done by other tribes, which was a fairly common occurrence even up until the early to mid-20th century. My grandmother's brother was taken by Cree from Alberta and raised by them. They had assumed he had died until decades later when they were reunited and learned what had happened. That owls are a sign of death. My mom would not let anything that has to do with owls in her house because of it. I worked with owls and I have met people who have this fear. It seems to be a very common superstition. It is usually the witch who turns into an owl or has evil owl assistants to do her dirty work. Or that if you hear an owl, it means someone in your home will die. Unfortunately, this means there is a lot of persecution of owls. Whether it is from bored teenagers shooting them because of the legends or actually fearful older folks who trap or poison them. I like to show people our owls, because sometimes they will be at first a bit aghast and then warm up to them when I explain their appearance and behavior. My favorite was this older grandma who came with her family. She did not speak English and literally clutched her shawl in fear when she saw me holding a barn owl. But I used my phone to translate, and told her about the owl and what his name was, and let her pet one of his very soft shed feathers. And at the end she was smiling and calling him a good owl. The owl is not a sign of death for every tribe. I am happy to say, I know that the Cherokee view owls as messenger between the spirit world and will protect them. When the humans slept, dogs would get together and party, but not before taking their tails off. They did dance the entire night, put their tails back on and return home. But one time a coyote found them and all the dogs had to scramble away to their homes for safety. But a lot of them grabbed the wrong tail. They never danced again at night because they were afraid of the coyote. So they were stuck with weird mismatched tails for the rest of their lives. You forgot the parts where this is the reason that dogs sniff each other's asses LOL to see if the other dog has their tail. I do remember that. ILL remember for next time I tell this story. I am Cherokee and growing up the Arctina hornet serpent really freaked me out. The mountain my family lived on has these mysterious glowing lights that according to legend was from the Arctina trying to trick people into finding it. There is also Spearfinger, an old lady who can transform into your loved ones and eat your liver. So the first one is called Seed Co. Do not know the translation in English. lived at this lake and it was his spot. We do not go there or he will kill you. Used to have nightmares about him based on what I was taught as a kid. Like how you could stand at the edge of the water and be looking in and he would come out of it and just grab you. But then the mountain blew up and filled in the lake, so do not know if he is still around or not. The second I do not remember the name, but translated into English is dangerous being who lives in rivers and drowns people. Anthropologists think it was our way of describing dangerous log jams and whirlpools in our river. Forgot to all that we also believe in these little people called stick Indians. They are kind of like trickster types, like gnomes or elves, I guess. I was told that they gather in sad places, like where people died or people were feeling sad. Something like that. There is a picture out there of what appears to be one. The people in the picture are not from my tribe, just a neighboring tribe. What tribe band are you? My tribe also has legends of stick Indians, but I've never heard of another with them as well. I remember always being terrified of them. And I still don't like whistling at night because that is how they talk to one another, and you might call one over if you do. Hope you understand, but I do not want to disclose my tribe for personal reasons, just know it is from Western Washington State. Also, I totally forgot about the whistling thing too. No whistling at night and keep windows covered. The raven is why we have light. He was selfish and greedy and tried to steal the light from a box after tricking a girl into opening the box. The girl's father had raised her to never ever open the box ever. They lived in total darkness. They did not know what the world or one another looked like, etc. He, the tricky raven, tricked her by masking himself as a person in a world with only two people, and causing the person to fall in love with him. Once the box, containing light, was open, the raven stole it, dropped it, it broke. An earth god light, clink it, hide specifically, heavy clink it connections. We have a spirit similar in Aboriginal culture. It's called a mimi spirit. Basically, when you go walk about, this spirit day or night will try and trick you into following it. It will appear. You walk to it and it's vanished. It will appear again. You again follow it for it to disappear. Repeat this multiple times and you are lost forever. I was 7 when I first actually met an elder whose son was taken by the mimi spirit. I'll never forget her broken face when she told my class. Heard of something similar from an Aboriginal friend of mine. This beast called the Kardachi man. Have you heard of it? My friend won't go into details. I don't really know any actual stories well enough to tell, but I know the rules. 1. If you hear someone you know calling your name, but you also know they're not supposed to be there, don't respond, especially if they are out of sight and insisting you come to them. 2. Always play group games in counterclockwise order, otherwise you're playing with the dead. 2. 5. Also don't eat in the dark. This is considered inviting the dead to eat with you. If you can extend your hand all the way out and still see it clearly, then you're fine. 3. Don't play card games past midnight. If you do, and someone knocks at the door, don't answer it. Try not to drop your cards. If you do, then don't bend down to pick them up, or you will see hooves under the table. That is bad. 4. Say thank you after meals, even if you're the one that made it. Even better if you say it in native tongue. If someone finishes their meal and says thank you, you say you're welcome, even if you didn't give it to them. Even better in native tongue. 5. Don't try to contact spirits, especially with board games. This is not a tribe custom. It is more of an unspoken common sense among the res people. 6. After someone dies, you should gather family as quickly as possible to have feasts for 10 days. The first dinner is large. Then every meal after that is smaller feasts meant for portions of the family to come at different times to help. The last feast on the 10-day is the closing dinner, which is the largest, with the entire family expected to show up and help. For every meal of these 10 days, put out a plate of the deceased's favorite foods first. Contrary to Rule 4, you do not say thank you at any time during these 10 days. This is because it is believed that it takes the dead 10 days to relive their lives before they pass on. So this is your last chance to eat with them. 7. If a bird flies into your house, someone is going to die. 8. Pregnant woman should not hold any child that isn't theirs. 9. It is accepted that if you actually tried to curse someone, literally going through all of the steps with the intention of harm, not an accidentally wishing them bad luck, then your family will also be cursed horribly. 10. If you play with fire you'll wet the bed. You a whore Dennis Orney, I bet. I have heard the same rules, just not as detailed. So thank you for elaborating on these. I am impressed. Native Americans. Would you include Central Mexico? Because oh boy do I have tales for you. Spill them. First of all, I live in rural Mexico. There are many different people. The ones who settled here are descendant from the Aztec and speak Nahuatl. So that is the people I'll tell you about. One of my favorites is the Nahuatl. Some people were thought to be able to turn into an animal. Most of them could only turn into one. But the most powerful could turn into different animals. There was a man who owned an hacienda where my town is. And he had a sort of overseer that everyone was afraid of. Said overseer could take a message all the way to the next state, think hundreds of miles, and bring back a sealed response in a day. He also seemed to know everything everyone did, all the time. He was rumored to be a Nahuatl that could turn into a coyote. His quarters were heavily warded in his absence, which only added fuel to the rumor. For you can only kill a Nahuatl if you find the human skin he sheds to transform and burn said skin. We also have Chaniks. They are little beings similar to gnomes that play tricks on people. When you go to rural Mexico, the locals warn you about them. They say that if you hear a kid crying and knocking your door asking for help at night, you should never open, since it might be a Chanik and it might try to hurt you if you open the door. I feel like I may be late, but I have a lot of Aboriginal myths. Most are old tales that involve magic or giants taking animals, cunning ravens, the birth of the Tlicho people, but more sinister of tales, the Naga, the Aboriginal version of Bigfoot. I also know of an Inuktitut take about witches that live under the ocean called the Kalapiliut. I am a Northern Canadian with an Aboriginal father and a white mother. The tales I heard were either from teachers, grandparents, or friends who have embraced their culture. So let me know if you want to hear some stories. Yamori or Yamo are the giant twins. Now I can't honestly remember too many stories on these brothers, but there are landmarks all around the territory I live in that is exhibited as proof they were alive. In the middle of the Mackenzie River, biggest river in the NWT, there is a large stone sticking out of the river which looks like the petrified guts of a beaver. There is a giant branchless, leafless tree sticking out of the top of this stone. It is said that Yamo had hunted a giant beaver and gutted him there in the river. He used his spear to anchor down the cuts so fish may feed on them. They are still there to this day. Yamori's body can be seen laying down. It is essentially a mountain range that looks like a giant human laying on his back, completely with face and feet. This can be seen from the peak of the hill as you enter a town called Footliard, the southwesternmost town in the NWT. There is a lot more about these two brothers, but I'll have to ask my dad, but I am away at work for now. Not me, but my fiancée is 50% native. She said that when she was a kid, her mom, who lived and associated with their tribe frequently, was told to take her and her siblings to the storm shelter and to lock the doors because the owls were coming. In her tribe, it is believed that owls were possessed by unkind spirits and would come back to haunt people who had harmed them during their life. Her mom, who was just a child then, had followed her parents' orders and had taken her and her siblings to the shelter, but she hadn't locked the door. She opened the door and above her she saw a swarm of owls flying over her and the other nearby homes that also housed other people of the tribe. She said they all flew past the nearby homes and never saw the occurrence happen again. But until this day, her mom gets nervous and uneasy when she sees an owl. I am Team Sheehan, and we seem to have a lot of shapeshifters, which some are questionable. I think a lot of them are similar to the idea of skinwalkers. But some of the shapeshifters like Raven have been a huge part of getting the things we need, like the moon and stars, although mostly through trickery. I have known some people who swear they have come into contact with shapeshifters that usually end up being like a mimic of someone they know, usually some with them, but they're often faceless. There was apparently a ghost war once. Mosquitoes were once a bloodthirsty group of people. Sinica. There is a legend about a giant woman who grabs lovers with her tits and chucks them over a cliff if they duck too long or speak ill toward each other while in bed. This will do. Unzips pants. Not supernatural, but there is a red clay deposit on our traditional territory, fairly rare in our part of northern BC. Legend has it that a war band from our people fought with another war band and the blood from that battle stained the clay red. Elders consider it taboo to go near the area. The Stick Indians. They were these horrifying spirits that I was terrified of when I was younger, and still freak me out a bit to this day. I just remember being told they tried to scare you at night, and that they take pregnant women and carve out their babies to raise as Stick Indians. Not a fan. That is very shitty of them to do that. Here is a non-scary legend from the Osage. The story of the medicine spider. Long ago when the people were young, the chiefs of the many clans of the Osage sought out different animals to become symbols of their people, to impart wisdom and strength to them. The chief of the isolated earth, troubled because he had yet to find such an animal, went out hunting for food and to quest for his people's symbol. After he had been hunting for some time, he came across the hoofprint of a massive stag. "Ah," he said, "Grandfather dear, reveal yourself to me, so that you may bring your strength to my people," and began to track the stag so that he could take it as a symbol. For many hours he tracked the stag, and gradually the tracks became fresher as he started to catch up. However, he was so focused on following the tracks of the stag that he did not lift his eyes from the ground, and did not notice that his path would lead him directly into a spider's web. The web was massive and strong, and the chief was caught just enough to impede his passage for a moment. In anger, he struck at the spider, but it dodged his blow and scurried out of reach before proceeding to scold him. "Grandson," said the spider, "why do you strike at me when it is your own carelessness that has caused you to walk into my web? What has you so preoccupied that you cannot watch where you are going? Why do you walk as a blind man?" The chief of the isolated earth suddenly felt foolish, but felt compelled to answer the spider. "I was following the tracks of a great stag, so that it can be a symbol of my clan and bring strength to our people." The spider replied that it could be such a symbol, and the chief scoffed at it. "You are such a small, weak thing. How could you bring strength to my people?" The spider answered, "Where I build my home, and where I build my home all things come to it. Should your people learn this patience, they shall become strong indeed." The chief saw the wisdom of this, and went home, satisfied. And so the medicine spider became a symbol for the isolated earth and one of the symbols of the Osage people. Traditionally, the medicine spider is depicted as a stylized black widow,